Yo, comrades, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about Nikke Got Us a Victory. We're going to do Inherit Bonds stories. So it's Doro, Isabel, Heron, and Noah. Then we're going to do the Neir Colab event. And then we're going to do the collab event characters. So B2, or 2B, A2, and Pascual, I think. Yeah, so this is going to be a long one, so get ready for it. So we're going to start with Doro. She's the boss of Inherit, and she's like a super main character for the whole thing overall. And we've interacted with her with Overzone, but I didn't really want to cover her there because this Bond story takes place like while the characters are hanging out in Eden. So if you listen to my stuff last week, or watched my stuff last week, with Chapter 19, Eden, we get introduced to Inherit, and the commander beats Dorothy for the first time. So like I said, the Bond story takes place while we're all hanging out in Eden doing bullshit and whatnot. So while in Eden, we find out that Doro spends a lot of time just standing in the courtyard staring off into the sun or whatnot. And so we asked Noah about this, and she reveals that Doro used to be a member of the Goddess Squad, which we know, but Commander did not. And so she is also the leader of the Inherit Squad because she was like here when they were created and kind of got that whole thing going. She's also very aloof to the rest of her squad and just kind of let them do whatever they want. She tells us that Doro was there. She informs us like more stuff that we learned from Overzone, like that she was there when the Ark was set up. She watched thousands die protecting it, blah, 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 all this stuff from Overzone. She mentioned that Doro founded Eden, which we already know about, and also that you got to be careful with Doro because she's kind of nuts, which is true. She tells us how Noah was out with Inherit one day and she found something that Doro wanted, but that she couldn't secure it because of the raptures that attacked and whatnot. And when she came back, Doro like fucking lost it at her and stuff. And so we're like, oh, that's interesting. So let's go pest her. Let's find out what's wrong, because that's what we do as the commander. These stupid Bond stories. So we go out there and like try to talk to her and engage with her. She ignores us for like several days before finally acknowledging that we may be sincere and that she's going to allow us to go on a walk with her. So Dora takes us out in the desert that surrounds Eden. And then she mentions that we're going to go on like a breezy 5-hour walk to the place to find what Noah mentioned that flower was. She told us about it earlier. So we go with her despite her belief that we're weak and lying to her because all humans are liars and betrayers and whatnot, or some crazy shit like that. After some time, we take a break in which we share our water with her because she didn't bring any. And then we also talk about how we don't mind if Doro hates humans as long as she doesn't hate us, which is poetious. This causes her to laugh with a human for the first time ever, which she tells us about specifically. We also talk about the red antenna that Noah mentioned, which is where the flower is found when she was talking, when the flower is found. So we look around with Doro, and finally she just wants to give up and go back, but we decide that we are going to keep looking, and so we search some more. We find some flowers under some scrap metal by this like red antenna thing, and so we dig them up. Then we take it to Doro, and she's like, this is not lily wise, this is not what I want. All your work was for naught. How does that make you feel, asshole? And we're like, you're kind of a bitch. That's not what we say. But she does reveal to us that this whole thing, she knew that the lily white flower was not going to be out here, and the whole thing with like Noah was like kind of a setup, and it was like a hazing ceremony to see if we'd actually be like worth her like minimal amount of paying attention to. And then she's like, you mad, bro? And we're like, no, we're not mad, it's all good. And then she calls us out for being fake nice again. So we say, no, we're real nice, we promises. So she even points a gun at us. She threatens to kill us. And tells us that she doesn't have a limiter like other Nikkes, that she can go out and kill humans like whenever she fucking wants, which comes up several times in her various interactions with the commander because she's kind of a bitch. And then she's like, I'm going to call Isabel to come pick you up, and then she leaves. So back at Eden, we're talking to Rappy after Isabel came and brought us all the way back here. She describes the Guardian Shield thing, which is what the operation was where the Goddess Squad like stuck around until the Ark was like sealed up from the Overzone story, which I talked about like several weeks ago. You can look it up here. And she's like, well, she tells as much as she knows about the whole situation. And honestly, I mean, Rappy's been around for like, I mean, the timeline, I feel like I get like mixed messages on, but generally I feel like it's 100 years ago is when all this stuff went down. So, and then 50 years ago is when Eden was like set up, or like 30 years ago or sometime afterwards. So Rappy has been around since like day one. So she's almost like 100 years old as well, because she was around when like the Ark was first like established, or like shortly thereafter, because that's how she ended up running into Red Hood before she was fully corrupted, right? Like maybe not at the very beginning, but shortly thereafter. And so she knows a little bit about it, but she doesn't know everything about it because she was a human for part of that as well. The Goddess Squad was there. They disappeared afterwards. No one knows what really happened to them. Afterwards, she then mentions that the Ark never acknowledged their sacrifice in any meaningful way, and especially not to the Goddess Squad themselves, which we've met several of them at this point. Not met all of them, except we haven't met Red Hood yet, which is a whole thing we'll get to when we get there. And then Lilywise is the mystery, right? At this juncture, if you're just following me and not following the story. So then we're like, okay, cool. So we go to Doro and we're like, hey, we just want to thank you for saving the Ark. And this makes her super mad because she's fucking Doro. And she's like, your little pathetic thanks is not going to repair hundreds of years, like 100 years of damage, which is fair. So then she storms off. Later, she's thinking about all the conversations we had. And then we come to say goodbye because at this point we're heading back to the Ark. And we ask her that, hey, you don't have to open up to us, but someday you want to open up your heart to somebody and let them in. And then after that, we leave. So she sits by herself and thinks some more. She thinks about Pine and about finding their paradise, which ends their bond story. All right, so next up in the Inherit squad is our friend Noah, the shield lady, who's very good at PvP, but nothing else. Okay. Anyway, so we're headed to work, and Noah is there. It's like, what's up, girl? What are you doing over here in the outpost or whatever? And she's heard of the whole bond situation from Maxwell, supposedly, because she read her research or something. So we're going to spend some time together so that she becomes stronger. So D0, we head out to get scrap from some dead Nikkes for Noah. She makes fun of us some more. We're a weak human. Some raptures show up. And we hide behind her shield. She kills the raptures, splits open Blacksmith, who's a Tyrant class rapture, and finds a Nikke who's injured, but not dead. We ask her to help a carrier up to Unlimited, and she is like, nah. And we're like, why? And she's like, if she's weak, she can't deal it. I was weak once, and I had to force myself up, and blah, 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 blah. And always take care of myself, so she should have to do the same. And so we're like, well, we're going to do it. So we pick up the Nikke, which is extremely, extremely heavy because you're carrying like a literal fucking android full of metal and bits and pieces and whatnot. And we drag her for like the whole day, and then we almost pass out from exhaustion, and then we actually do pass out. We wake up later, and Noah has carried us and the Nikke to like an abandoned home, and she started a fire, and she's like making fun of us and stuff. And then we talk about how like we know that the injured Nikke will come back, that she'll be okay and whatnot. And then she teases us a bit. The next day during the journey while we're dragging along, we are attacked. Noah saves us and even mentions that having people to save has made her attack stronger and given her like more motivation to push herself and whatnot. And again, hints at like the bond system with us. But then after the battle, we find out that the injured Nikke is not breathing. So Noah's like, fuck it. And she grabs her and runs to get her to Unlimited, where Ludmilla and Alice are very confident that she will recover. So after that, we're resting and we chat with Noah for a bit and then give her a hug, which she accepts. But then she says, never again. No one can touch me. The Nikke gets better. And when later on when Noah's like asking about it, Ludmilla's like, she's dead. And Noah's like, huh! And the Nikke's behind her and she's like, I'm not dead. Tee hee hee. And everyone has like a good laugh, I guess. They're going to take her back to the... Oh, no. So then once she's better, Noah escorts us along with the Nikke to the Ark so that she can go. And the Nikke... and then when she heads down the elevator, we talk to Noah a little bit more about how much Noah likes protecting people and whatnot, and how she's got to go back to protect Johan and the people of Eden with her shields. But then we pinky promise that we'll hang out again some other time and then do some protecting ourselves, I guess. And that wraps up her bond story. Next up in Inherit is Haran, the witch. Yes, the witch. So we wake up and we're like in the desert or something. We have no idea where we are, why we're there or anything. And of course, Haran is there teasing us. She's like, you're dead. Ha 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 ha. Har. Anyway, she says she's going to help us get back to the Ark and be safe. But we have to help her do like witchy shit, like gather ingredients like toadstool and lizards and bullshit. And we like think about it and we're like, so we try calling the counters, but there's no communication. So finally we're like, all right, fine, we'll go with you. So then we travel around a bit. We spend all day getting like lizards, and we finally like, what is this all for? And she's like, hair conditioner. And we're like, okay. So, and then at some point our belly rumbles and she's like, oh, that's right, you have to eat, pathetic humans. And so she makes this lizard stew, which we're very skeptical about, but hey, it's fucking good. And we're like, ask about it. And she's like, it's a witch ingredient or a witch recipe from some ancient text. And we're like, okay, crazy dumb bitch. So then we actually spend like a decent amount of time helping her out. We like gather ingredients, we eat soup, we like chill, probably fuck, I don't know, it doesn't really mention it. And then one day we asked Haran if she ever plans on taking us back to the Ark, which makes her mad because she's always mad about some trivial bullshit. And she's like, I need one more thing. So we go to get a star flower, and she takes us up to the top of this like 10-story building, and then across like an alleyway is another 10-story building. And she's like, jump over there and get it. And we're like, can we just go down and like walk across and walk up this building? And she's like, no, teehee. And if you want to go by yourself, there's a bunch of raptures, so good luck. And so we're like, fuck. Anyway, so we make a running leap, and we're able to leap super far, which is very impressive, actually. And we get the flower, and then we make the running leap back, and we miss. Oh, fuck. But we're able to, like, grab on at the last second, and so we're hanging on by, like, our hand, and we're, like, dangling to fall on Heron's like, I'll help you, but you have to promise to stay with me forever. And we're like, no, we can't do that. We have to go back to the Ark. We have, like, shit we got to do. And finally, Heron's like, all right, fuck it, fine, whatever. And so she, right as we're about to fall, she rescues us. She doesn't like the fact that we want to go back to the Ark. In fact, she hates it. She wants us to stay with her forever and be her, like, slave, sex slave or whatever. But we're like, no, we have things we got to do. And so, fine. So she takes us to an elevator, and we're like, and she's like, all right, get over there, big guy. And the whole place is surrounded by raptors. And we're like, really? And she's like, go ahead, I got it. And we're like, fine, fuck it, let's go. And so we just start walking by ourselves, and then she's like, all right. So then she, like, summons her, like, crazy scythe thing and her, like, crows. And then she, like, goes to town and kills, like, all the crows and everything like that. And just completely decimates the raptures. And then she mentions that if we ever get lost again on the surface and she rescues us, that will belong to her forever. She then kisses us with tongue and everything, and I suppose. And then she, like, turns into, like, a birder of crows and flies off. Leaving, like, a pile of black feathers. And so we take one, and then we head out. Which wraps up her Bond story. And now, there is a fourth member of Inherit, Isabel, who I was going to talk about, but then when I pulled up her Bond story, it was like, oh, this takes place after, like, a later chapter. I think it's chapter 22 of the main campaign. No, I think it's 21 of the main campaign, but that's going to be in a couple of weeks, because we're going to do chapter 20 next week, and so it's going to be a little bit. So we'll just slap Isabel in there later on when she when it becomes more relevant for her story. So, but saying that, we're done with Inherit for now. We're going to start getting into Nier Automata, or not Nier Automata, the Nier Automata Nier, or whatever the fuck they called the event, and then the characters associated with that. All right, next up we have the Nier Automata event. Hooray! We get to see 2B and A2 and Pascual, if you care about that. And Nikke got us a victory, and they look fine as hell. So we'll do their Bond stories afterwards. And but right now, let's get into the story. So a mass-produced Nikke is in battle with the Rapture. Her squad is all dead, and the Raptures are all dead except one, so there's two of them left. So she used her last bullet to blast the Rapture, and then at that point, they become enveloped in light. Then we see that 9S and 2B are there, like appear in the world. They're super confused, like, where are we? They try to reach out to command, and they're unable to do that. And then they see a Rapture, so it's time to fight. Meanwhile, over at the Ark, Anderson tells us that the D-Wave is back. That all the D-Wave is contained within this one factory, so it's not like in several locations or whatever it has been in the past. It's all stuck here. So this time, the power is, like, off the charts because it's all concentrated in one area. So it's up to us to grab the counters and head out there and figure out what's going on. So we show up to the factory, and then we see 3 Nikkes. They're all the same model of mass-produced Nikke. So we approach them. They say that each one of them has a separate mission and that they all abandoned their missions, and that's how they ended up here outside the factory. Ainz is, like, pretty sus about the whole situation, which is understandable. And so we asked for their names, and because they're, like, mass-produced Nikke number 12, and calling them that is, like, super confusing. And so then we have this completely ridiculous conversation about nicknames and stuff. And then at that point, I don't remember, and I didn't really write down what their other nicknames were, so I'm just going to identify them as, like, arrogant guy, shy girl, or they're all girls. Arrogant girl, or arrogant one, shy one, and normal one. So those are the 3 Nikkes as the number 12s that will be referred to from here on out, because it'll be it's easier for me to remember, and it's also easier for you to understand what's going on than trying to deal with all that crazy bullshit when it comes to, like, their names were like 6000 BS2, or it was some awful thing like that. So it's time to enter the factory, so we head on inside. Meanwhile, watching us is 2B and 9S, so they're watching us and wondering what's going on. Inside the factory, there's nothing there. There's no barrier, no raptures, nothing. Then all of a sudden the raptures show up, so it's time to fight. After we defeat them, Rappy points out that they are hollow, that they just disappear into a flashlight once they're defeated. We discuss this, and Rappy notices something. Someone is following us. Elsewhere, A2 is awoken by another Model 12. A2 freaks out a little bit. She threatens the number 12, and then they confusedly try to rectify their different understandings of what's going on. Then at that point, the number 12, Nikke mentions defending her, and then A2 has like a change of heart from that. And then a rapture shows up. After the rapture gets destroyed and disappears, there's more chit-chatting. Then they decide they're going to join forces to discover what the fuck's going on. We head back over to the counters. And they want to rest because it's been a long time traveling over here, wandering through the factory, killing raptures, all that stuff. So then at that point, we find a nice little room to hang out in, and Neon and Rappy go to check out the area to make sure we're secure. The 312s, they start talking, and they're getting along very well, which Ainz points out is extremely rare, because the thing with mass-produced Nikkes is that they all look exactly the same equipment, same like facial features, the whole thing, right? They're like low-grade androids, essentially. Are they technically cyborgs? I would say that I think the Nikkes at some point, they're Nikkes, right? But I wouldn't really call them androids because they have like a human brain inside. So they're more like cyborgs than androids, to be completely honest. Or I guess they're, robots controlled. I don't know. Maybe there's another term for it. Nikkes. That's what they're. And that the reason why Nikkes from the same like mass-produced model don't get along and don't talk is because it's very like crazy, like talking to somebody who looks just like you and all the stuff that kind of comes along with that. Anyway, Rappy and Neon come back. The area is safe, so we set up camp. And we start to hear a sound. And the 12s mention that they've heard it before, and there is a pattern to it, so we decided to check it out. So we move into this room, and as we move in there, behind us, 2B and 9S continue to follow. Inside this room, we find a wall with a bunch of Nikkes standing and firing at a bunch of raptures against another wall. And as like a Nikke falls or as like a rapture falls and gets turned into like dust light, another one shows up and replaces it. And they are very systematic about it. It's like fighting in like the Revolutionary era. Where like everyone lights up and then they take turns firing at each other. So very respectable form of combat. Also, neither the Nikkes or the raptures are really responding to the counters at all. And so even when Neon yells as loud as she possibly can, firepower! So Rappy decides that we should kill all the raptures and see what happens. Meanwhile, back over with A2, the 12 asks her name. She tells her A2. And then A2 is like, what's your name? And she's like, I'm Product 12. And so she's going to call her P12, which is much easier than calling her Product 12. And P12 is like, I like that. This is awesome. And so then she leads the way forward. A2 gets concerned at some point as they get into a discussion about Nikkes versus androids and the differences and whatnot. And A2 finds out that Nikkes have human brains, which is cool. And androids have consciousness data instead of like human brains. So that's fun. So then A2 gets offended when P12 is like, neat. And for some reason she gets super offended, and so she ends up storming off. Then we head back over to the counters. The raptures that we keep destroying keep getting replaced super fast, and it's becoming very frustrating. But we decide to soldier on and see what happens. After a bit more abuse, the Nikkes start to approach the counters, our little group here, and they start saying something about exterminating, and they turn on us and they start firing. So it's like, get the fuck down! So we hide down, and they're firing at us, and then the arrogant 12 gets mad and starts firing on them, knocking off one of their heads, and the head comes rolling over to like the meek 12, and the head is empty, and it's like, rah! Meanwhile, back over with, we do this a lot, back over with A12, or A2 and P12, they get to a similar room as the counters are in. But A2 is like reasonably sketched out about the whole situation because it's a bunch of like she's following around this Nikke. She doesn't know what Nikke is. She's like in a strange world. And this girl's like, follow me. And she leaves in her room. And then she just sees like a ton of them firing at these like monster robot thingies and then firing back. And she's like, the fuck is this a trap? And P12 is like, no, it's not a problem. Come on, let's get going. And so they start working their way across to the opposite side of the room where there's a door. And then all of a sudden, the 12s all turn to them and start talking about like exterminate. And so A2 and P12 make a break for the door. And then they get through the door and they slam it and lock the door on the Nikkes. But the Nikkes are trying to break down the door. A2 mentions this being a trap and being super upset, and then some raptures show up. And so P12 promises that it's not a trap from her, but they will have to discuss it later because it's time to fight, which takes us back over to the counters. We are standing around making a plan that we're going to escape out the door, only this time we're surrounded by a bunch of raptures from the front. So we got Nikkes in the rear, raptures in the front. What are we going to do? Oh no! What we're going to do is that 2B and 9S show up and they clear a fucking path for us. And so we follow them out. Because we don't know what else to do, and we don't know about these people, but it's better than being surrounded by these like crazy ghosts, these crazy, what is it called? Apparitions, that's the word. So we follow them away, and they lead us all the way back outside the factory. At that point, Rappy turns her gun at A2 and is like, were you following us the whole time? And they're like, yes, but we're not bad guys. And we're like, all right, I believe him. And then Rappy's like, all right, well, the commander believes him. Because we believe any beautiful, hot, or robot girl. So, anyway, so we have Rappy stand down, and then we start talking about there, and they're like, ooh, we're androids from another world. And we're like, oh shit, another world. Damn, this is just like before. So we discuss everything about the D-Wave and the transportation and how like the chainsaw people came that one time, about the different worlds. And then we start talking about Gatekeeper and how Gatekeeper is probably sleeping around here causing all this bullshit to happen. We then talk about the difference between the worlds and how the androids have never seen a human, which if you played Nier Automata, there's like a whole sad story about that. Talking about sad stories. Like these two games are made like, they're like a match made in heaven or a match made in existential dread. Then we talk about the factory producing Nikkes and Raptures, and also about how they're all just like replicants and not real. And now it's just like before with Gatekeeper. We keep discussing this, and then S2, not S2, 9S. He does his little scan again. He's like, okay, I found the source of all this stuff. It's like deep inside back where we're going, and that must be Gatekeeper. And so let's head in together, and so we agree. At that point, Neon runs over and points out that the 12s are all super satapotamous, seeing like another 12 with their head gone and being like hollow inside. And so Ein suggests that we chat with them before carrying on. So we do. Meanwhile, while we do that, A2 is threatening P12 after they cleaned up all the Raptures. P12 tells like her really sad story. She's like, oh, I used to be here and I used to just like kill Raptures and repeat and kill Raptures and repeat. And then one day I decided like I don't want to do that no more, so I didn't. But didn't find anyone else who agreed with me. So I just wandered around the factory alone, not doing anything until I stumbled upon you. And then A2 is like, all right, I believe you. Lead on. So then she does. So when we get back to the counters, the shy 12 starts questioning if she's hollow in her brain. And so we talk her down with the help of 2B talking about how she doesn't have a human brain either, but she's still got a consciousness. She's got like whatever consciousness protocol. And then they all decide, all the 12 decide they're going to come with us back in, and then we're going to go track down Gatekeeper. 9S then brings up that there's a shortcut that he found when he was doing his little scan Apotamus. So we go. On the way, Eins and Neon point out that Rappy and 2B have the same voice actor. Oh, goodness. Hilarious. That's pretty funny, actually. And there is some back and forth about this, because it's like completely meta-breaking, which is very like Nier Automata, so it works. And then finally, Rappy like shuts it the fuck down. On the way to Gatekeeper, we then ask the androids about what they're going to do when they get back to their world. And they're like, work! And then one of the 12s asks why they won't stay longer and relax. I think it's a normal 12. And because they're clearly projecting. And then she tells her that she does what she wants, and she wants to return and fight for humanity. Then the other 12s acknowledge this, and the original one admits that she has to think about this some more. We then skip back over to A2. So P12 notices a flower and is enraptured by its beauty. A2 hurries her along, stating that she should look at more beautiful things in the future, which is going to be very sad shortly. After the sunsets, they set up camp. A2 insists that P12 sleep. She's starting to slack and walking around and searching the factory and whatnot. And P12 thanks A2 and says that she'll never forget A2. And so they're having like a nice little conversation and time together. That she'll never forget working together. That P12 mentions that she loves it and that she's having so much fun and having a great time. And then after they have their little rest, they head down to the basement where Gatekeeper is, along with a ton of doors with Nikkes and Raptures coming out. P12 reveals that this is where she was born. She was born in this very specific room, and told when she woke up, all she knew is that she was told somehow by a mysterious like essence that she was not supposed to awaken Gatekeeper no matter what. She then points out that the transporter that A2 needs is behind Gatekeeper, so they're going to have to go through him. So then A2 mentions that the Gatekeeper needs to be woken up so they can destroy him and get past him, or just, destroy him. And so at that point, we head back over to the counters, and we rewind a bit back to the previous day before A2 and P12 took their nap. So the counters are doing the same thing with 2B, 9S, and the 12s, where they're going to take a rest. And the 12s question the androids more about brains. And like, we don't have brains. And it's like, why do you look so human? And they're like, we don't know. And but we have consciousness, or like electronic bullshit in our brains. And all the 12s are very impressed. They're also a little concerned. The next day, we talk about preparations, and the 12s get on board with having to kill the other 12s finally after being sad eponymous and having some talks and whatnot. And the androids get like super pumped up, 2B and 9S. We tell everyone that we love being protected. It makes us feel loved. And then Neon chastises us for flirting with everyone. But we move forward anyway. Eventually we get stuck. There's like a barrier. And it's the same barrier that the chainsaw people like that didn't allow us to get into the gatekeeper, so we're trying to push into the gatekeeper. We can't move forward. And then 9S starts doing a scan. The counters talk about the 12s and how they look sick at this point, and we chat with them and they say they're going to be okay. But are they? Probably not. So they kind of like dodge around the subject, to be honest, and then the whole place begins to shake, and it's a D wave coming. So we head over to A2. And A2 and P12 are also having a difficult time trying to get to the gatekeeper because of the barrier. And they need to really get past it because A2 wants to wake up the gatekeeper so she can get her transporter, get out of here. So they end up making a bunch of noise, and A2 decides she's going to destroy the doors. And as soon as she does, the Nikke start turning on them. P12 joins her to make it happen, and they end up just getting through all the doors and destroying all of them. And right when they do, all the Nikkes and Raptures collapse. Then the room starts to shake and the wave begins. So then that's how we got there. All right, so then back to the counters. The gate is down, and so now it's time to go. And they head in there, and there's nothing in the room. Ninus points out that gatekeeper is below them, and it's like, all right, time to dig down. Then Raptures attack. Raptures attack and as we all fight, the timid 12 starts having like a real existential crisis. She's the one who had like the head fall into her lap. She talks about how she was born in this factory and how she could be like these ones, but she's not like these ones because somehow she gained some sort of consciousness, and so she ran, and now she doesn't want to fight, and then she runs out to guard one of the replicant 12s, and then the arrogant 12 yells at her and then shoots her in the head, and it finds out that dun-da-da, she was a replicant. Whoa, she was right. And then back to, so what is the meaning of existence? Near about it. Anyway, back to A2. They get attacked by a secondary gatekeeper, and A2 tells P12 to run, but P12's like, no, I'm going to fight with you. We're a team. We're going to do this together. I love spending time with you. This is the best part of my entire like 6-week existence. Then they so they fight, and then they see the first gatekeeper shiver, and it shivers some more like once the fake gatekeeper gets destroyed, and then it takes off and it dips out of there. At this point, P12 starts to shimmer and disappear. And she's like, oh, that... And then A2's like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, I knew this would happen. I was created by the gatekeeper, so once he's gone, I'm going to be gone. And then she thanks A2 for all the joy she brought to her life, that even though it was a short and simple life, that because of A2, it was filled with joy. So, God, so good. It's like, damn. And A2 thanks her as well for giving like her some extra motivation to live life and enjoy things while she has it and to remember the good times or whatnot. And once she's finally faded out of there, A2 goes to the transporter, and she falls asleep, and then she fades off back into her world in a flash flight, which is like end of part A, which is super Nier Automata. Because there's like 12 endings or whatever, right? Anyway, back to the counters. Arrogant 12, who shot timid 12, starts threatening the other one, the normal 12 that is left. Then goes on a rant about seeing others like them, how jealous she is about the counters and the others that are unique. She gets super mad, and then she gets covered in light, and a bunch of replicant 12s rush her. She then turns into like this massive rapture creature that we have to fight. So after we take it out, she starts regenerating again, and so we got to destroy its core, which doesn't work because normally you destroy the rapture core and that kills him, but not this time. So 9S is like, oh no, there's a secondary core below. It's right there. So 2B rushes up with her sword and destroys that core, while the counters take out the main core. And finally, it spits out arrogant 12, and then the rapture goes up in like a color, like a fades off into light. And then everything disappears. And the transporters for the androids show up. They're like, oh, thank goodness we can get back to our world and start fighting for humanity again. So they thank us, and they're like, hey, thanks so much for helping us out, getting us here, and we thank them. Like, we didn't do shit. It was all you do. Anyway, she thanks us, and we thank them. And then the normal 12 asks 2B about the meaning of life. Where do they come from, and what what she should do. 2B tells her that even if life is predetermined, that she can make the most out of it, and that her thoughts and feelings are her own. After, and then they disappear. After they're gone, the two 12s that are left, the arrogant one and the normal one, and they're like, are we both authentic? And then the arrogant 12 is like, I can't stand it. I don't want to be recycled and forever fight raptures. And so takes out a gun and shoots herself in the head. And she was a real Nikke. Later on in the epilogue, as we're back at the Ark, we are meeting with Anderson. He talks about how the arrogant 12, they scanned her memories, and that the normal 12, they scanned her memories, and that she was the one from the very beginning of the storyline. No, I think the arrogant 12 actually was also a replicant. I'm trying to remember. Anyway. But the regular 12 was a mass-produced Nikke. And there's at some point we get an option. It's like, she's like, oh, maybe you should kill me because I don't know if I want to live through this as well or whatnot. And we're like, no, let's bring you back. I think it'll be okay. And that gets real sad here. So then we learn, we learn that the normal 12 is the one from the beginning of the story. And that after shooting the Rapture core and the D-Wave came in, we report that we saw 2B and 9S disappear, that she was very rattled, and that she tried to flee out the door with the Nikkes and Rapture. So she shot the Rapture, the D-Wave happened, she saw 2B and 9S like pop out of nowhere, she freaked out and she ran away. That they got all this from like her memory chips or whatever, once they were like doing all that stuff. And then she watched them kill each other for like 2 weeks, so she had a mind switch. Right? Oh, no. I'm so bad. Okay. Yes, I apologize. Let's go back. So, the arrogant Nikke was the Nikke from the very beginning. Yes, and so she shot herself in the head. She died. She's the one who did the last shot, saw 2B 9S, and then ran away, but then got stuck in the factory watching herself, essentially, like other 12s kill raptors for like 2 weeks, had a mind switch, which made her like real crazy, which is why she was the way she was. He asks us if there's anything else, and we think back to this is the point, yeah. So then we think back to the moment when the arrogant 12 killed herself, and then the normal 12 is like losing it. So she was there on like a different mission apparently, because she was just like around this area, and she's like, I don't know if I can stand going on, and asks us what to do. And this is where we tell her that she should keep living. We can tell her to kill herself, or we can tell her we'll kill her, or we can say like, hey, things are going to get better someday, so you should keep living. And we finally talk her into like coming back to the Ark with us and living her life for herself and like finding meaning and purpose. And she lashes out at us at first, but then she says she'll try. So then back to the present, we're like, whatever happened to the regular 12? And then Anderson's like, we disposed of her. Goddamn game. Because the central government was concerned she would become an irregular after seeing all that crazy bullshit, and because she's only like a normal mass-produced Nikke. And she was acting way too human. Like, she was going around asking people if there was something in her brain or if they had something in their head and all this other stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. That's kind of sad. At that point, we head back to the outpost, to our home. And then outside of our room, we're about to walk in, but we hear the counters talking. Ain's just super concerned about having a human brain. And she's like, I know it's kind of silly because I know I do have a human brain, but do I? Because they're all having existential crises now. And she, Rappy's like, well, no matter what, you'll always be Ain's. Or she says that, one of them does. And then we're like, maybe we'll just let them be. So then we leave them to it. And we just like slink down in the hallway by the door and think about what makes us alive. All that hardcore existentialism coming in right at the end there. And then we recall what 2B and 9S said before, and about how we are what we are and what we define ourselves as. And we're not defined by like a meaning and other things, right? So if we have is like to think is to be, or what does that guy say? Descartes. I don't remember. To think is to be I am. I don't know. Anyway, it's some existential stuff. But yeah, so pretty much the fact that he's thinking about himself and his existence and things he wants, does that make him alive? Does that make him human? What about the Nikkes? What about everything else? So there you go. That wraps up this event in a very Nier Automata way that would make Yoko Taro very proud. All right, so time for the Nier Automata event Bond stories. We got 2B, A2, and Pascual, who was not in the main story or the side story at all, but he was like a free character that you got, and he's the only male you can play in this entire game. So there's that. I mean, he's a robot, but it's not a sexy robot. Is there anyone else? No, because all the other events have like sexy girls. This is like the only non-sexy thing, and it's like a man, right? It's very interesting choice. I don't want to go with like, I don't know, nobody. Fuck. Anyway, so all these Bond stories take place during the event, and so the first, obviously, because it's like a limited collab. Anyway, so the first one we're going to do is 2B. So we are wandering around the factory at some point with the whole crew, and we need a rest. So 9S finds a spot for us, but Rappy wants to scout around a little bit, and her and 2B head out. After some discussion about trusting each other and all that stuff, the girls head out. And Rappy apologizes for like not trusting her, and 2B's like very understanding about the whole situation, because it's like, well, yeah, we're strangers, and like, why would we trust each other and whatnot. They then find this like rapture trap, and they're able to take care of that pretty well. But apparently there were some humans here who set all this stuff up, and Rappy explains that to her, that it's very unusual because according to the central government there are no humans on the surface. So they investigate some further, and they search around and find some more traps, and then they find an entrance to like this locked room, but they need to get a password. So the first thing they try is human, doesn't work. After that, they find a slip of paper with a hint, and it says, "Who are you?" And that doesn't work either. So then 2B suggests just typing Nikke, and Rappy's like, well, I don't think that's going to work. But it does. Inside, they find some stuff indicating that there were several people who were held up in here. They find a diary, and then the diary goes through like this person who, with two companions, like held up in here waiting for like to be rescued by like the United Earth Forces or whatever, the prior government to the central government. And then after a couple of weeks, two of them had to go off and search for supplies because they were running out. And then the raptures came, and she never heard from her friends again, and she was like eating feces and like her waste product and whatnot. And then they never returned. And eventually she like turned to this radio and was just listening like to like the same story over and over again to kind of give herself some comfort. And then Rappy points out like, oh, hey, there's the radio over there in the corner. And so they play it. And what it is a message, or it's like a broadcast about the goddesses of victory, about the goddess squad, and how they're like reclaiming the surface and they're defeating raptures and all this stuff. And it seems like she drew a lot of like hope from the thought that she was going to be rescued someday. And underneath the radio is scrawled like Nikke's our salvation or something, which is where the password comes from. And they're like, huh, interesting. Anyway, this seems like a nice room to hold up for the night so we can be safe. Let's go get everybody. And that wraps up 2B's Bond story. Next up is A2's Bond story, and this one's pretty adorbs. It's just about A2 and P12 like hanging out in the factory, and eventually they find like a little baby bird, and P12's like, oh, it looks injured, but we can take care of it, and then hopefully it'll recover. And A2's like, I don't care, do whatever you want. And so they do, and so they give it some food, but then it's thirsty, and so they give it some water, and eventually A2 starts to like warm up to the bird, like being around it and whatnot. And then so they continue to travel, and it like when they're resting for the evening, the P12 is like concerned the bird's gonna get cold, and so she like covers it up and protects it all through the night so it can stay warm. And then in the morning, A2 is concerned that P12 is like smothering it, but she opens it up and it's like, oh, the bird's doing great. It's so happy, and it's like wings are working, and it's like at some point they name it AP because like get it A and P12, like A2 2A. I told you it was adorbs. Anyway. So then they continue, and then they find like a little windowsill, and the bird seems like it's ready to go and it's going to be okay. And so they encourage it to like fly off and find its family and find food and live its best life. And so then it goes to fly, and it starts to fall, and P12 gets super concerned, but then the bird like flies away, and then P12 is like, A2, you're my best friend. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. And A2's like, I liked it as well. So they chat a little bit, but they enjoy each other as they continue to look for the transponder or the transporters to get A2 out of there. Lastly, we have Pascual's story, which, sure, I don't know why there's... I'm confused by this whole situation. But anyway, Pascual, who's not in the story at all, and we did not talk about in the event because it didn't exist, is a character in Nier Automata that is like leader of like the friendly robots, and just Google it. Anyway, so he wakes up. Yep, it's a he. And there's a Nikke there, and she calls him a rapture, and he's like, no, I'm a machine. Are you an android? And she's like, no, I'm a Nikke. And so they talk a little bit about that and whatnot, and then Pascual helps her because she's got a broken leg, and then she's got to rest for a couple days and she'll be good. So they just kind of hang out. He like works on getting her some more spare parts so that she can fix herself up even more, and then more time goes by, and then he goes and gets like a flower for her, and he's like, look at this beautiful flower. And she's like, I don't want no shitty flower. I want to be sad hippopotamus. And then Pascual's like, my new goal is to help you to be a little optimistic and such a sour hippopotamus. And so then he talks about his world and her world, and how even though it's dark and how the humans are gone and it seems like it's time to give up, that you can like be inspired and live happy and do this stuff. and I'm going to help you see the good in the world, right? So finally he convinces her with like his talk and his flowers and whatnot that there's beauty everywhere and that everything is not like a living hell, quote unquote, according to her. And then at some point they see a fawn, and it's like, oh, and so finally she agrees that life's not like a hellish nightmare continuously, that there are some good things. And then hopes they can spend more time together in the future and have a good time. And then all of a sudden the whole factory like shakes a lot, and Pascual's like, I'm gonna go check that out and see what's going on. And when he wanders off, the Nikke gets attacked by a rapture, like jumps on her and looks like he's about to kill her, and she's like, oh well, at least I got to enjoy life for like a moment. And then right before the rapture can kill her, she disappears into like light because she's a fucking clone. a gatekeeper left, so like fucking game. And then the rapture's like, well, oh, nothing to see here, because it's actually real rapture. And so it like meanders out of there, and then Pascual comes back and is like, where's my friend? And then he disappears in light, and that's the end of the Bond story. It's like, fuck, stupid shit. Anyway, that's it. That's all we got for this week. Join me again in a couple weeks for, I don't know what the next event is, but next week we'll talk about campaign. And Nikke got us a victory, the 20th campaign, which is excellent because we get introduced to all sorts of fun things like Nihilister and Liberado, who are cool. Well, Nihilister are less cool, but that's a story for a different time. Go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.